All right, let's dive right in. We're about to unpack a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a movie. You've got big tech, you've got international espionage, and at the center of it all, a single whistleblower. So what's the core claim? Well, a former Google engineer says he has cracked a leaked intelligence database, and in doing so, he believes he's uncovered a massive global criminal enterprise that's hiding in plain sight.
And listen to this quote, because it really sets the stage. They're employing military personnel that have military knowledge, military techniques, tactics, and military equipment to target civilians. I mean, wow, that is not a line from a spy thriller. That's a direct quote from the man we're talking about, and it just shows you how high the stakes are here. So the big question is, who is this person making these incredible claims?
Well, that central figure is a man named Reynaldo Aguiar Marcano. He's the one who says he's piecing this whole giant puzzle together, and his claims are, well, they're both incredibly complex and pretty darn alarming. So let's talk about his background for a second, because it's pretty important to the story. This isn't just some random guy. He's a former software engineer from Google, where he worked on their search ranking system. He's even an inventor on some U.S. patents that were granted to Google. On top of that, he's a recognized political refugee with protected person status. Now, he argues that it's this very specific, unique combination of skills and experiences that gave him the ability to decode the data that he apparently stumbled upon. Okay, so where did all this information even come from? Well, according to Aguiar, back in 2024, he somehow got his hands on this huge database that was leaked from Venezuelan intelligence. And he quickly realized, this wasn't just a jumble of random data. He believes it was a geo-index, basically a map of a global conspiracy. And he's apparently spent more than a year just trying to make sense of it all. So, what did he find? What does he actually think this data reveals? It all comes down to this core theory he's developed, which he calls the modern paramilitary. And what he's arguing is that this is a whole new kind of warfare, one that's not fought on a battlefield, but behind keyboards and inside courtrooms. And to explain this, he draws a pretty wild analogy. He actually compares the network he claims to have found to the Colombian guerrilla groups back in the 1980s. They used to kidnap civilians for ransom and political pressure out in the jungle. But he alleges that this modern version does something different. Instead of the jungle, he claims they use corrupt courts and technology to kidnap children all over the world. And for Aguiar, this isn't just some abstract theory. It's incredibly personal. He claims that his own son was kidnapped for 10 months as a direct result of this very system. So, in his mind, his personal nightmare is actually a real-time proof of concept for his entire modern paramilitary theory. Okay, but his claims don't just stop at theory and personal stories. He's actually started publishing what he says is actionable intelligence, pulled directly from that database. We're talking about specific geographical coordinates that he believes can be used to track down a very high-profile fugitive. So who's the target? Well, he's allegedly tied to something called the Cartel of the Suns. Now, for those who don't know, that's the term used to describe a supposed drug trafficking organization that operates right inside the Venezuelan government. And one of the biggest names associated with that group is the exact person Aguiar is targeting with his data. And that person is Diosdado Cabello. Now, this isn't just any politician. He is officially a wanted man by the U.S. Department of Justice. They've got him on the list for narco-terrorism charges, and there's a huge multi-million-dollar reward out there for any information that leads to his arrest. So this is a little sample of what the data he's releasing actually looks like. He's published pages and pages of this stuff. You see a latitude, a longitude, and then this score. He says that score is a prominence score that his own algorithm calculated. And his claim is that these specific coordinates point to the most important locations for Cabela's network in Caracas. But then he started comparing these scores, and this is where it gets really wild. So you see scores for Caracas in the 43 million range, other places in northern Venezuela around 58 million, but then he found coordinates in Cuba with a prominence score of over 1 billion, with a B. To him, that massive jump is a huge red flag, pointing to what he believes are the network's real historical roots and its true center of power. So why is he so confident in this data? Well, he believes it's uniquely valuable. He says the network's own actions against him helped him fine-tune his algorithm, basically confirming which targets were the most important. As he puts it, and I'm quoting him here, this has to be gold for the military. It's like having the adversary telling you where to hit them. But, this isn't just some guy posting theories on the internet. Not at all. Aguiar has been methodically submitting all of his findings, all of his allegations, through official U.S. government channels. He's putting every single claim on the record. And here's a look at one of those actual filings. This is an IRS Form 211. This is the official paperwork you fill out if you want to become a government whistleblower and apply for a reward for turning in original information, in this case about alleged tax non-compliance. And when you look at who he's naming in these complaints, the scope is just breathtaking. He's not holding back at all. The list has over 150 names on it, and it includes major world leaders. We're talking Diosdado Cabello in Venezuela, Xi Jinping in China, Vladimir Putin in Russia, and it even includes some very prominent U.S. political figures like Donald Trump, Greg Abbott, and Ken Paxton.
And his submissions aren't just a list of names either. He goes into detail about the how. He outlines specific alleged techniques. For example, he describes this whole method for making financial transactions completely untraceable. The idea is you travel to a primary country, say Italy or the US. Then you sneak across a border into a country with banking secrecy, like Switzerland or the Bahamas, so there's no official record. You do your banking, and then you sneak back the same way. It creates zero paper trail. He claims this is a key part of a massive tax evasion scheme.
Okay, and this brings us to the most recent, and probably the most urgent part of this whole story. Aguiar is now claiming that as he pushes all this information out there, both publicly and legally, he's facing direct retaliation. He's alleging active obstruction of justice. And he's putting it in writing. In a formal letter to the Department of Justice, he makes this incredibly serious charge. He's claiming that the conspiracy he's trying to expose has now infiltrated the U.S. federal court system itself. And he's specifically pointing the finger at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. And if you look at this timeline from his own filings, you can see just how fast things are escalating. On January 8th, he files his formal criminal complaint with the DOJ. The very next day, January 9th, he alleges the clerk's office at the Fifth Circuit refuses to docket an emergency motion. Then on the 16th, he says they refused a second time. And he claims all of this is a setup for a state court hearing on January 22nd, where he fears that a judge he named in his complaint, is going to have him thrown in jail.
So let's just step back and recap. You've got a former Google engineer who says he's decoded a leaked intelligence database and is now making these absolutely extraordinary claims against some of the most powerful people on the planet. He's not just talking about it, he has put everything on the official record with U.S. authorities. And now he's claiming that the very system he turned to for help is trying to silence him. It leaves us with a really huge question. What happens next when a story this big, this complex, steps out of the shadows and lands squarely on the public record?